It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here from their respective places in New York City and lower Lehigh Valley. We're going to talk about the press-only event Microsoft held on Monday, announcing Microsoft 365. What is it? How's it different from the previous offerings? What are some of the new features? All of that in great detail. We'll talk about Microsoft's Edge browser and why it isn't as bad as some would like to paint it, and that 775% increase in Microsoft Cloud traffic, maybe not so much. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly. Windows Weekly comes to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. Stay in control when it comes to your company's access points and authentication. LastPass makes enterprise-level security simple. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 666, recorded Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. Chocolate Sahara. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and faster than the competition, with no fees for egress or API requests and no complex storage tiers either. Your business may be unpredictable, but your data costs shouldn't be. Start a free trial at wasabi.com. Enter the code WINDOWS. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. Joining us today, this is episode 666 for April Fool's Day. This is a disaster waiting to happen.
Double whammy.
It's a double whammy. Mary Jo Foley, do you give me your promise, your pledge? Do you swear not to do any hokey, fake news today?
I do,
Thank you.
sure.
Mary Jo Foley would never do that. She's from ZDNet, allaboutmicrosoft.com. Paul Thurrott, do you pledge on the Lower Macungie Valley Stone, wherever that is?
Leo, if you look at my scalp, you'll see there's a number
Oh, what is that number? 668?
Yeah, what are those, nines?
I got that wrong. Oh, yeah, 3 9s. What's that?
What is that? Oh.
Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. He also puts his books up on leadpub.com, including the Field Guide to Windows 10. And you both have survived the Rona.
Still here.
My Corona.
My Corona.
Yeah.
And Mary Jo, you're in the, oh man, I'm just seeing such horrible pictures coming out of New York City. I saw somebody tweet saying, I don't mind how quiet it is, but I can't take it that it's just sirens all the time.
Oh, that would make me crazy.
I mean,
There's a lot of sirens.
is there?
Sure. I mean, there's always a lot of sirens. You guys hear it on the show when we're recording, right?
Yeah. So I guess it's just that the sirens are still there. It's just the other stuff is gone.
It's the siren song of New York.
Oh, man.
It is. It is.
But
we are doing that thing now at 7 p.m. every night where people go out on their balconies and applaud.
At shift change for the healthcare workers.
Yeah. So that's kind of nice.
That is the sweetest tradition. I just love
is.
that. And then somebody says, hey, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sleeping here. Do people go on their balconies and sing in New York like they did in Italy?
I haven't heard people singing. I've heard people cursing as usual, so some things haven't changed, you know.
There's a unique sound in New York City because you have those central air shafts, which many
we do
people,
right near where I live.
Yeah. And there's just this certain echoey sound that is unique to New York City. Sure. As somebody says, "Me, you."
Yep. Yeah, the other night I was woken up out of a sound sleep when somebody was going down Park Avenue yelling, "I'm awake. You all should be too."
Oh, no.
Then I heard somebody in our building yell out, "Shut the beep up."
Yep.
I love New York. Here we go.
New York's awesome because, like in Pennsylvania, which you would think people would not be hip to the latest things, whatever. I would go to like a Dunkin' Donuts and I would order like a breakfast sandwich without the bread. And they always accommodated this, no questions. And then I went to New York one time, you know, on back when I was using the ferry, and I asked for this in New York City, in Manhattan. I said, could I get whatever the breakfast sandwich was? The woman turns around and looks at me and she goes, are you kidding me? And I was like,
what's your special this week?
I can't be the first person who's asked this. You know?
No, what is it? No, Mary Jo will know. You're supposed to say coffee, white, flat. What do you say? There's a thing you say when you walk up to the cart.
Coffee regular.
Coffee regular and a muffin or whatever.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts is like that too, actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
There's a way of speaking.
Up in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm so glad you're both healthy and doing well. And of course, we're all exactly where we always are. It doesn't seem like anything's different.
I know.
But we're glad you're all staying home and healthy too. All of our Windows Weekly listeners. There's lots to talk about. Actually, there's a lot of news.
There is.
So, of course, as always, cancellations. Now, what we're talking about here, because we want to cover all these streaming events, is, we were thrown a little bit because Google said we're going to go do it streaming and then said, no, we're not going to do it at all. But Microsoft's still planning on what? What is the plan for? Well, Ignite's coming up and then Build. What are the plans?
Yeah. So the one we were all wondering about was Ignite, which is supposed to be September in New Orleans. Paul and I were both like, they're never doing this, right? But
no way. They could cure this thing tomorrow, and this would never happen.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So as of last night, they put an official note on the site for Ignite saying it will not be an in-person event, and it will be digital only. So Ignite's going to happen still. That's the big IT Pro show. Normally, hold
on. I'm sorry. Ignite is not going to happen. Ignite is a in-person conference that people go to. This is not the same thing.
It's not the same, obviously.
I mean, it's not. They're going to do something in lieu of, No, I know there'll be announcements and sessions, and
they will. Yeah. They'll do all that kind of stuff, and they're going to figure out a way to try to make it compelling. I mean, we're going to find out first with Build, right? When Build's going to be a virtual event this year, and we're going to see what they think they can do to try to make people kind of interact.
I will say that this will probably change in the future, but as far as Build's concerned, it is probable that they can construct a session list of recorded sessions that will rival somewhat what the in-person thing would have been, right?
Yeah.
I haven't heard any about this in a while, but I know weeks ago people from Microsoft had been recording things for Build, for Build, I guess, with air quotes. So we'll see. And of course, September is far enough away that Microsoft could construct something, that is a little more involved, than a simple video or whatever. But we'll see. I don't know. I think there's a model that Microsoft and others are already following where they have these virtual events. I don't know if you follow the Xamarin One Day event they did last week. Where 7 hours of content. For some reason, it was live. I don't feel like it had to be live, but they did it live. And it's like people from their home giving sessions instead of people, coming to a place. And it was kind of interesting,
Yeah, yeah. But the bigger part of this story to me is I heard as of this week, Microsoft's actually made a corporate decision that they're not going to have any in-person events through the end of June 2021.
Wow.
Like none. I mean, there'll be, if things recover, they may go and attend a third-party event and have somebody there. But as far as other big events, and so that, if this is true, which I believe it is, that means no MVP Summit next year, again, in person.
No Build again.
No Build in person. Right. And all these other things that kind of are around that. So, we said Ignite's canceled, but Ignite the Tour is also canceled as an in-person thing. So that's after Ignite happens, when they send people to all countries all over the world to give them technical content. That's not going to happen in person either. And then that means Ready, which is Microsoft's internal sales conference and tech conference. That's not going to happen in person. So that's what's usually co-located with Inspire. We knew Inspire was already canceled. And there's also multiple Readies throughout the year. So this is huge. This is like them canceling tons of events from what I hear again. And I'll tell you, when I asked them about this last night, I said, hey, I heard you started telling people inside the company that this is the plan. They said to me, we'll confirm that everything in calendar 2020 is not going to be an in-person event. And I said, well, what about the first half of 2021? And they said, I'm going to give you their exact wording because I think it's kind of interesting. They said, we will continue to evaluate the event landscape, but that is what we have to share at this time, which is they aren't going to tell us yet that the first half is canceled.
That makes sense for them, though, right? You don't want to trigger problems with the stock and for shareholders, et cetera. And I think it's also, as mealy-mouthed as that is, I mean, there's also this notion of, I mean, what if there is a recovery or a cure or whatever it is, and maybe they could reevaluate things for the first half of next year. I mean,
but I think they have to make a decision. I think the reason I think they have to is they have to be out there getting event spaces and paying for them, right? And so I believe they have made this decision, and this is what they're telling their teams inside. And the reason I think they should say it publicly, an MVP brought this up on Twitter today, and I think he's right. He said, okay, they canceled the in-person MVP summit this year. So some of us got vouchers from our airlines for 1 year's use. So we need to know if they're not going to do it next year, because then we need to figure something out, because otherwise we're going to lose our vouchers. And I think that's a very legitimate reason to tell people this, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
I mean,
I don't. We like going to a lot of these events. I mean, I love Build. I love Ignite. I like them because you see like we always say, we see our friends. We get to connect with people from Microsoft and do one-on-one meetings with them, have meetups. So it's tough.
Well, we were joking. I think it was before we started recording. I mean, for the three of us, our days have not changed too much. I mean, especially you work from home and.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, so, okay. But, the other half of that is, whatever anyone thinks about us working from home, whether they think it's great or terrible, the reality is we look forward to these events because we don't get into an office every day.
That's a good point.
Those events are, they're like little family reunions, they are. Or big family reunions, really. I mean, they're fun. And when you don't get out a lot, like I don't, I mean, that's what leads to that, first night drinking disaster, because you're so excited to be around everyone. You don't realize it's 3:00 in the morning and you got to work at 7. So yeah, we're going to miss that. It's,
I know.
It's too bad. And other people will too. Other people from all over the world that might travel, in this case, to, New Orleans this September, or Seattle for Build in May or next May, whatever. And they're not, and that's a big deal for those people too, for the same reason.
Mm-hmm. The part I'm the most interested in all this is, what is Microsoft going to do to try to make these events compelling and to foster a sense of community? Because right now you could say, okay, they're going to use Teams. They're going to record some things using Channel 9 probably. But how do you try to get people more engaged? Because when you're sitting at home, we pay an inordinate amount of attention to things that are being broadcast because that's our job. But if you're just, a normal IT person and you've got your kids at home and your spouse at home and you've got ahead of you like 10 hours of content back to back and you're sitting in your home office, how do you make that something engaging, right?
I'll say that just by virtue of the fact that people are sitting at home and are having this kind of non-ending sameness day to day, anything virtual that is different from the day to day would be of interest.
That's true.
So we'll talk about this in a moment, but Microsoft just had a virtual event for the press, which they declined to broadcast to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And there might be reasons for that. Maybe they were worried about bandwidth and whatever. They never really said. To my knowledge, they've never made that video available after the event in any form, which they should. I think that if you're worried about people being enthusiastic about what you're doing or wanting to pay attention to what it is you have to announce, one of the ways you do that is to break the tedium and provide them with something they can look at that's different. So I think in this, I kind of said, like I said up front, like Ignite is not happening. They're doing this other thing, or, Build is not happening, but they're doing this other thing. Those other things are still important because nothing is way worse than a virtual event. And,
Right.
you know, like Leo said with Google I/O, I mean, Google I/O is a milestone for Google every year for a number of reasons. They release Android usage numbers. They talk about the next version of Android in great detail. They talk about a lot of the other products. I mean, they should still be doing that stuff in some form. And I know there's sessions and whatever, and there are all these reasons for it. But I was a company like Google that exists online, that is literally an online only company, not to have an online event when their in-person events canceled.
I know.
Makes no sense.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, everybody
It really is
understands that an online event is not the same.
Right.
You know, but it's. I mean, nothing is not the same either, and it's really problematic.
Nothing is a lot worse.
Yeah, nothing is worse.
It is.
I would think. And I think companies will get good at doing this too, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, look, we talked about how useful it is for us, and this would be true of people who are developers going to build or IT guys going to Ignite, to kind of interact with people from Microsoft who are maybe responsible for the products that they use, or parts of the teams that, you know, they just want to meet and discuss things with. There's a whole nother level of interest in, well, those guys are going to be on a video, but they're in their houses, you know, and they can, and there's kind of a neat, intimate, unprofessional, you know, kind of thing to it that's, I think, is still fun and would be a nice distraction, frankly, at a time when we need some distractions.
Yeah.
That's all.
You know,
so we'll see.
I suspect we're just going to see, and I think it's going to be the new normal even after this is over. We're going to start seeing streaming press conferences, both of the kind you mentioned, which are open only to the press, and others. Black Magic, which does a lot of really neat video stuff. NAB's off. Black Magic's having an event on Friday to announce new stuff. We're going to cover it. We'll stream it. I think if it's done right, it's a great opportunity. In fact, it can be better and more valuable, more informational. You just don't get that face to face. That's all.
There's a creeping quality to what's happening that I think a lot of people haven't figured out yet. And we all had that moment where we finally did, right? So back in February, when they canceled Mobile World Congress, Microsoft, which is the tiniest, dumbest, smallest segment of Mobile World Congress, said, well, we'll have a little virtual mobile, what do you call it? Mixed reality event ahead of Build. And the idea was, well, maybe that was something they were going to talk about at Mobile World Congress, and now they're going to do it at Build. Well, now Build's not happening, you know. But back when they canceled the Mobile World Congress thing, it was like, you know, they're overreacting stuff in China, you know, who knows. But then as time goes on here, it's like, well, okay, actually, you know, this is serious. This is going to go on for a long, long time. We need to adjust things. And I keep referencing this, but it really did. It was literally my moment of realization. It was the Jared Spataro and Satya Nadella were talking in another video they haven't released publicly for some reason, which they should. It was fantastic. And they were talking about, it was a Microsoft 365 announcement for a couple of weeks ago. And they were talking about, he said, Jared Spataro said, the world of work has changed, and we are never going back to the way it was before.
Yeah.
But as he said it, I was like, that can't be right. And then I thought, you know, the more you think about it, the more it's to what Leo just said. We're going to see more and more virtual conferences in a world where this thing has been solved. I really do think this is going to change everything. And we don't know sitting here today what that means 100%. Like, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5, 10 years, we're going to look back and say, oh, look, that's where it all, you know, that's what changed.
He'll be like, remember when we went to in-person events?
Oh, I think,
well, I hope it's not completely
say,
over.
What were we thinking going to CES? Everybody came home sick. What were we thinking?
I was already thinking that.
You know? I mean,
it's
just chance that COVID didn't hit the U.S.
I know.
The first week of January, because there you have so many people visiting from China. I'm sure there were people from Wuhan, and I mean,
it's like a how-to video on how to spread a virus.
180,000. I mean, and then you all disperse to every corner of the world. I think it's an amazing twist of fate that didn't happen, and
it's true.
No one knows. You know, we talk about this a lot on the shows. And I think it's a fun exercise, intellectual exercise. What the world's going to look like at the end of this, and it is very possible we'll be so anxious to go back to the movies, back to conferences, back to.
There will be an irrational exuberance.
Yeah, and we might just be so. Oh God, I can't spend
except for
one
one
more
thing,
minute.
Leo. I mean, this thing is going to come back. So. we can. We see stupid stuff today for sure, and it will continue. But
if there's this all clear siren, people might flood out, but we also might be PTSD and say, I don't know, I don't want to touch anybody, and we might. This might. I think it's. I don't know which way it'll go. I feel like it's almost more likely. We've talked about this too, but remember how our elders were scarred by the Depression. And and people
were cheap for the rest of their lives.
Cheap forever.
Even still are. My mom.
Yeah. No, I know people like this too. I mean, that it changed them forever.
I know. It did. My mom still is like, it's $1 more. I'm like, Mom, my goodness.
Yes. We're going to be a generation of germaphobes. I think that's true.
Well, think about New York. How is it going to change New York, right? I mean, the way we pack into subways and restaurants, right? Is it ever going to go back?
The way New York runs is untenable. You can't do it. How do you get around?
But that's the only way you can live,
It is the only way.
How do you get around without the subway? Yeah. And the subway is going to
by the way, one of the things that has to happen in big cities that was already happening is restrictions on traffic. And imagine how different New York City would be if in those busiest areas of Manhattan, you could only have delivery vehicles of some kind, and there would just, there was if they reduced the traffic dramatically. I mean,
well, if we had sensible governments that would learn a lesson, no evidence of that ever, but that would learn a lesson, there's all sorts of things we'd change, right? Look at the sky right now. I don't know what it's like in New York, but I bet it's the most beautiful day ever, right? There's no pollution.
Not bad.
The smog is lifting.
Sure. Leo, spring is exploding all around us. It is the type of thing you should be able to enjoy. In Mary Jo's case, of course, you want to get outside.
I would want to walk around Manhattan all the time now.
We're getting into the best time of year to be in New York City. I talk about this sometimes because Microsoft has a
If I didn't have to fly there, I'd be there right now because I just think it'd be so much fun to walk around in this kind of dystopian.
Nobody's walking around.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to do it because there's nobody around. It's safe, right? True. And
I went out yesterday. What was it yesterday? I went out yesterday in Midtown, right near Grand Central, and I had to go to the store, and I passed maybe 5 people. Normally, me going to the store in the middle of the day, I would pass like 1 million people, right? Like the sidewalks would just be crammed, and the stores would be packed. And I walked in, and there was nobody in there. People were saying hi to each other on the street. That was like unnerving, right? Like, wait, they're talking to me. I don't know them.
You turn it into Californians. Right. I think there will be it's certainly in Manhattan there'll be some scarring, and the opportunity is for it to make it better. I think we'll see.
I hope.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the restaurants surviving.
I know that's tragic.
Smaller shops that aren't mega corps,
We're looking at the SBA loans, the small business loans. I think that there is enough money from the government to maybe, I hope, save some of these small businesses.
The thing that makes this tenable where I live is that right now restaurants are still open. You can't go inside and sit down and all that stuff, obviously, but you can get stuff to go. And you'll see, not everyone, but most of the business restaurants, you'll see a sign now that says we're open. Pick up and whatever.
Is it that way in Manhattan too? A lot of takeout?
There's some takeout, but I think the volume here isn't enough to sustain them compared to what they normally get.
And the rents are so high in the city.
Right.
That although I would hope there'd be forgiveness on rent too.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I know. I think a lot of landlords today are saying, okay.
Today's payday.
Where's the rent? And yikes.
Yeah.
Yep. It's going to be interesting.
That breaks my heart.
Well, anyway.
No, but
this week
I choose to look on the bright side and say maybe this is an opportunity for us to really learn a lesson and to rethink.
I do think there are positive things that will come out of this.
The cracks we see in society, the people, a lot of people have seen for generations, and everybody's seeing now. This is the time to fix that and make it work for everybody.
I mean, the cleanliness thing hopefully can continue, like actually cleaning the subways all the time and the railings. That would be great.
We have the technology. We have the means to do it.
I'm like, that would be nice.
All right. So you mentioned Microsoft had an event, press-only event. We would have streamed it if they'd made it open to announce Microsoft 365. I know you were both
We knew this pretty much.
Yeah, but we've been talking about it for a while.
Right. I know. So number one, I'm curious why they didn't broadcast this. And
me too.
My guess is maybe it was a trial to see how they can do closed press events and how that works. And how it can work for them announcing.
They just sent out a feedback form, which you might have seen. They wanted us to provide feedback.
Gave them a lot of feedback.
Well,
so tell us what was.
Well,
what
no,
worked,
there was no thing at the end. Do you have anything you'd like to say? I have a lot of things I'd like to say.
I sent them an email back, and I said, I have some real feedback. Do you want it? And they said, yeah, send it. And I'm like, okay.
So it sounds like there were some negatives.
Well, okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay. Let's talk about the presentation. So Yusuf Mehdi, who runs, what's his title? It's a very unusual title. Modern Life and Devices, right? So he runs the consumer side of Microsoft.
It's like hero,
ancient life.
Hero of modern life.
Yeah, he's the guy, if you remember a couple of years ago, his job is to try to win back the love of consumers to Microsoft after they canceled many consumer-facing products. That's a tough job. That's his job now, right? So he was presenting and talking about the whole idea of blurring the lines further between work and life and how Microsoft wants to be there. The focus was very much on what we thought, which is prosumers, productivity-minded consumers. This isn't gamers, right? This is people who want to use To-Do and Teams at home. That's a real different market.
Office 365 subscribers.
Yes.
Which, by the way, just up front, we should say there aren't really that many of them. There are only 38 million consumers subscribing to Office 365 today.
Right.
Depending on, I bet that number is plummeting, right? It's going down, I would imagine.
No, that number's not going up.
It's going up, really.
It's going up, but it's not going up very much. I mean, over time.
I'm surprised. I think most people who use it would use it because their work provides it. And then no?
Yeah. I'm a little confused by this. But go on. I'm sorry.
So just a weird licensing thing. Technically, you're not supposed to use your home subscription for work purposes, although everyone does. We've joked about that on the show before, right? So,
but if you're like I use my Office from work. I was a subscriber,
right?
With the home edition, but then I realized, oh wait a minute, I get it from work. I just use the work version.
Right.
Can people do that?
They're trying to do,
yes.
Yeah, you can.
Well, you mean can other people do that?
Can anybody use the work version on their home?
Well,
computer?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you get Office, however you get Office 365, technically, you could use it to do anything you wanted. There's no
exactly. Like licensing wise, you're not supposed to use the home version for work, but you can definitely use the work version for home if you want to do that. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
But
yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what they announced is what we thought. They rebranded Office 365 Home and Personal to Microsoft 365. So they put the M365 label on this, and then they added some incremental features and a couple new apps that are to come. And they're now calling this Microsoft 365 Personal and Family. Those are the names of the new plans. They cost exactly the same as what Office 365 Home and Consumer cost. So for one person, Microsoft 365 Personal is $699 a month or $69.99 a year. And the family version, which lets you have 6 people all getting a terabyte of storage and using the Office apps individually on their PCs, that costs $9.99 per month or $99.99 annually. So exact same pricing, same number of people can use it, mostly the same plan, except for some of the newer apps they talked about and newer features. So it was basically what we thought. I don't think any of us were stunned that this was the core of this announcement.
Every new thing that they announced had been rumored, except for maybe that editor thing, which is a kind of a bald-faced Grammarly ripoff, but whatever. We were questioning what we sort of felt, and this is mostly for Mary Jo, I should say, the royal we thought that Teams for consumers wasn't ready, and maybe they wouldn't discuss that. What they did was they discussed it, plus some consumer integration features for the business version. But it's not coming out till much later in the year, probably not until October, November, or something like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, because that is the one part of the announcement I think we were wrong about.
Okay.
So we kept hearing Teams for Life was going to be a new version of Teams for consumers, but that's not what that is at all.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I know.
So what? Oh, it's the integration part. In other words,
it's the integration. Yeah. So Microsoft is taking some features for Team and adding them to Teams that it thinks will appeal more to people in their home life and their personal life. And they're going to integrate that through the mobile versions of Teams. And so you'll be able to sign in with your personal account to Teams and access these features. So the way I thought about it, and I think a lot of people did, was there'd be Teams for consumers and then Teams for work, but that's not what they announced, which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I thought they'd be like a new SKU or something like that.
I sort of feel like there is going to be, but you don't think there is eventually going to be a version of Teams that's only for consumers?
No.
So in other words, you'll sign into Teams with an account and you'll get the experience based. Okay. I mean, that's okay.
I guess that makes sense.
I think it makes sense because if you think about the way that Office.com works is the same thing depending on the account you sign in with.
That's true.
You could get Outlook on the web versus Outlook.com. If you sign into OneDrive in Windows 10, you could sign in with your home account and get, OneDrive Consumer. Sign in with your work account, get OneDrive for Business. Actually, OneDrive supports both, by the way. So Teams will probably do the same thing, allow you to have both if you want that, just like you would in Outlook, or OneDrive, and then switch back and forth.
Yeah, I bet you're right. I never thought of it being like that, but I think that is exactly what it's going to be.
I kind of didn't either, but now that you're saying it, it seems like that's what the approach.
Yeah. So that was like the main thing we were, quote, wrong about. We knew there was this Teams for Life thing, but we just didn't know how it would manifest. And I'm going to be curious.
Do you think that's to protect Skype, consumer Skype?
Oh, so let me tell you about Skype.
Yeah, there is an interesting thing about Skype because just to kind of preface this, there was some question. When you think about Microsoft coming out with a consumer version of Teams, which apparently they're not really, does that mean they get rid of Skype? But as we saw, I mean, he came right out of the gate with like Skype is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I got to talk to him for a little about the announcement, and I said, so what happens to Skype? Skype consumer, right? Now that you're going to have Teams with all these family capabilities. And he said, how we think of Skype? We think of Teams being a superset of Skype. And so for now, Skype's sticking around because we feel like it's a way to just do video chat between consumers. And if you want the whole meal deal, you're going to want Teams. But I think that's just for now.
I think it has to happen eventually.
For now. Right.
This is tied to something else we'll talk about in a little more detail later. This notion of what's going on with the Office 365 / Microsoft 365 commercial SKUs, because the versions of Office 365 aimed at small and medium-sized businesses have been rebranded to Microsoft 365. The enterprise versions have not. And that's very interesting. But we'll get to that. But the point is, some things are happening now. What's wrong?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, when we get to that, I'm going to have to gong myself or do it.
Well, by the way, so not you. I mean, one would have to be a special kind of genius to have any understanding in their head of all of the different SKUs of Office and Microsoft 365, especially on the commercial side, because it encompasses not just businesses of all sizes, but governments, educational institutions, other organizations. They have things that are not full SKUs, but are add-ons that you can do to, bump up other. It is the craziest.
So complicated.
Anyway,
Unbelievable.
but yes, but looking long term, I think the feeling is we've got two things that are the same thing. Maybe they need to be combined in some way.
Yeah.
And as gross as it would be to get some Skype inside of my Teams, I think that. That kind of has to happen.
Don't you think they'll just kill Skype consumer?
Yes.
And
what they'll do? They'll pull a Windows 2000. When the thing boots up, it will say Teams, powered by Skype technology.
So this is kind of interesting. A couple of readers asked me this week, is there still a free version of Teams? And I went and looked. There is. But if you do, when you're signing up for it, if you say, I want to use this for home or personal use, and you click that box, it takes you to Skype. It doesn't take you to Teams. And so that once they add these consumer features to Teams,
that will stop.
That will click in then, right?
Okay. This is actually a lot more like that Office Microsoft 365 thing I was talking about, because if you go to the Microsoft 365 site and look at business, 3 of the 4 SKUs you see are brand today. This is changing, but they're branded Office 365. Right. And that's been the system to date. They Microsoft, consider those Office 365 SKUs as essentially entry level, if you will, Microsoft 365 SKUs.
Right. Which is a bunch of baloney.
Well, yeah, we'll get there. But anyway, we should talk some more about this event because there's the event itself, which I think warrants some discussion. And then they did announce a bunch of new stuff for Office, soon to be Microsoft 365 consumer subscribers.
And Credge.
And there's your little link, right, to the commercial side of the house, because in commercial versions of Microsoft 365, of course, you get features for both device management in the cloud, Intune-based device management, and you get Windows 7. Windows. Oh boy, I think I'm going to down something. You get the Windows 10 Enterprise functionality as well, and Edge, of course, is a Windows feature, but it's part of this. It's not really part of it, but they talked about it.
No, it's not. It was weird. They kind of did this whole Microsoft 365 consumer announcement, and they're like, oh yeah, and then we get a bunch of Edge stuff also that is mostly consumer facing, but we're just throwing it into the event because why not?
It's all good. And I will say one of the features that they announced, we didn't know this at the time, but they actually have since released it, and it's an Edge browser extension. That's the form it takes. Mm-hmm. So mentioning Edge in this context isn't completely out of whack. Yeah. But obviously anyone can get Edge. Yeah. And I think you get most of the features they were talking about without having to be a premium, subscriber or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get that Grammarly clone, or is that only?
That's the one. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun on that. So yeah, one of the things they announced was something called Microsoft Editor. And if you're familiar with Grammarly, you will immediately recognize this thing for what it is. It is apparently being implemented as a browser extension, which is kind of interesting. So it's available for Chrome and for Edge. And I don't know what to say. It's Grammarly. I mean, the way this thing will work, it's not. No, actually, I guess it is true today. So the way this thing works is that anyone, so if you have a Microsoft account, which is free, you're not paying anything for it, you get spelling and grammar checking through this thing, and it works like Grammarly does. If you're an Office 365 subscriber, maybe this is the tie-in, you get additional functionality. And they had a term for that functionality, but I can't remember what it was. But in the future,
style refinements. Are you thinking of that? Style refinements.
Yes, refinements.
I need style refinement for sure.
I need some style refinements right now.
Yeah.
I haven't had a haircut.
It's going to be like, Paul, you should wear jewelry. So those refinements are apparently in there to some degree today, but there's no granular control for it in the extension. In the future, they're going to give the ability to individually check off the refinements if you want to use them or not. So the initial version, they're just on, or they're all on or all off, depending on your choice. But that was one. And, okay. The thing is, Grammarly is excellent. And the big issue I have, in fact, this is a humorous example of where this happens. I write in Microsoft Word, which has Microsoft's core spell checking, grammar, a style, everything is built into this thing. It's crazy now. It doesn't catch things all the time. So when I post articles to the web, and I have Grammarly in my web browser, Grammarly catches all kinds of things that Word never noticed. Today, I quoted from a Microsoft blog post. I published a quote that Microsoft had written. It was actually Brad Smith was writing about the facial recognition stuff. Mm-hmm. It flagged grammar issues with his quote. Grammarly did.
Nice.
When I had that thing pasted into my editor, the only mistakes that it found were in Brad Smith quotes. It's weird. It's weird to me that Microsoft, with its extensive, decades-long experience with this kind of stuff, and Word is a flagship product. I mean, for productivity, obviously, still doesn't catch some stuff. So, I mean, look, if you're a Microsoft guy, you might want to check this thing out. All I'm saying is Grammarly works really well. It really does. Nothing's going to catch everything. I mean, nothing can save us from ourselves completely, but
and we should mention at this point, Grammarly is a sponsor of the fine.
Okay,
Network.
That's something. It's something I use and recommend.
Yeah, you didn't even know it was a sponsor when you picked it. So
nope, couldn't.
Yeah. No, and we love it, and Lisa loves it.
Yeah.
She can't work without it.
I don't know how you could be a writer and not use it. Well,
I've never tried it. I've never tried it.
You should use. I'm sorry. I'm going to retract that. Sorry.
You'd see all the errors Brad
makes. Use the web and not use it. It is.
Yeah.
Everyone has fired off an email where you hit send.
It does help you with that.
And then you're like, oh,
I know.
crap, and you spell something wrong, or
It's true.
This will catch that stuff, and it is a lifesaver. It's crucial. Everyone should try it.
Yeah.
But the Microsoft version, not quite.
Or use the Microsoft one if you like to make some mistakes. You're okay with like an 80%.
Do you think it'll get better?
Yeah, but
AI makes everything better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
AI.
It's funny because spell checking is pretty easy. You have a big dictionary, hundreds, thousands of words, and if it doesn't match a word in the dictionary, you say, I don't know what you're talking about. But grammar is much harder to do.
It is.
It's and actually beyond grammar is harder too. Things like, so one of the things that they had in the demo was, by the way, this is a problem with Microsoft blog posts. I point this out all the time. They'll use an acronym that they've never, explained what it meant.
Yeah, I hate that.
Guys, the first time you use an acronym, you have to define it. You actually use the term and then put the acronym in parentheses and then you use the acronym.
That's right.
This is a mistake Microsoft makes all the time. So I hope that Microsoft uses its own editor when they post to the web, because this will catch that. So that's one of the refinements. Yeah. There's also style things like, if you follow Grammarly, which, again, recommend and use, they have over time improved their offering to do things like tone, and that's part of the style refinement stuff. It's like, in my case, but Paul, this seems a little angry. You sure you want to send it like this? Maybe you could, or maybe you're using too many passive aggressive terms, or everything's in passive voice, or the mistakes
or inclusivity, right? Like if you're saying guys and he instead of he, she, or they.
Yeah, that stuff's really good. I think, and it's not. It's not written in stone, but it's useful to get that kind of feedback. You could ignore it.
It teaches you, because as you keep getting flagged for these things, you'll start to recognize them, and then you'll stop making those mistakes. Yeah. Can I recommend Grammarly again? Because I got to tell you,
give it one plug.
It's a really good tool. Yeah. Sorry.
But they did other refinements too, besides Grammarly, right? I mean,
besides Grammarly.
Editor. Like Presenter Coach for PowerPoint is getting refinements also, like telling you if you're speaking in monotone, which is kind of an interesting one, right?
I thought the PowerPoint stuff was cool. And the one thing that, I don't know if it was Yusuf Mehdi or whoever said, you shouldn't spend more time creating a presentation, like the style and look of it, than you did creating the content for it, right? And that's one of the things, like, you may be an incredible speaker, you may be an incredible content creator, but are you also someone who has great design skills and knows how to put together an incredible presentation? I mean, that's an incredible range of skills to have. So, PowerPoint has this wizard now where you can go in and it looks at your content, it will recommend chart types for data points and so forth that are appropriate. Now it has videos they're adding. That stuff that's huge. I mean, you're a communicator. Great. You shouldn't have to be good at creating the presentation, right?
I mean, that's why I use Sway all the time when I was on my Sway kick, because I could not use PowerPoint to save my life. I'm like, creating a PowerPoint takes me like days, literally. Like, I don't know how to do it.
Well, and Sway had that awesome, it was kind of the equivalent of the Google I'm feeling lucky thing, where you just hit the button and just, spun the roulette wheel.
Come on, give me some templates and fonts.
Yeah, you just got a new look.
Round my corners.
Yeah.
Come on, round my corners. It was really useful, because I don't want to spend any time looking at fonts or designing something. Like, that's not my wheelhouse, as we like to say.
It shouldn't be anyone's. I mean, it's
no. Some people, that's their thing, right? Like that's their specialty.
Okay, those people. I guess what I'm saying is there are designers, people who can make those things and make them really well, but they're probably not very good at creating the content, or delivering the speech or whatever. And so this is a neat thing for PowerPoint because it brings all that stuff together, so that one person can do it all. I think that stuff is fantastic. What else did they have? They had the money tool for Excel.
Yeah, that was good. So I'm not sure I would use it, just because of I don't know.
Microsoft Money's back.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. He said Microsoft Money, and it was like for Excel.
I know. So this connects to your bank accounts and your credit cards, so that you can automatically put the information from there into an Excel spreadsheet. Like it'll just populate the spreadsheet.
Well, that's an important first step. You could. I bet you some third party could write something around that. Mm-hmm. Make a pretty good money thing.
And I think it's good there are people who are really good at Excel and use Excel a lot in work or whatever, and they want to come home and, when you're a hammer, you see everything in this span.
Everything's in a spreadsheet. Right.
Well, Excel guys make their to-do lists in spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
That's how they think. So that's fine. Yeah. And then
Stacey Higginbotham plans dinner parties in Excel. So
right. I mean, so these people who now that you have this online services integration where you can get all your account information, whether it's credit cards or bank accounts, et cetera, and get that stuff in Excel, it's cool. It's nice. That looked nice too. It's not something I would use either, but.
No. How about though the one I'm very intrigued by, the Outlook on the web getting the ability to link personal and work calendars in a way that you can kind of hide events from being events you don't want seen on either side to be kept private. I think
and that was people had questions about that when I tweeted it. To be clear, if people are familiar with how Outlook works today, within an organization, you want to create a meeting, and so you say, well, I want these 5 people to come. It pulls in their calendars, and what it shows you is not he's going to an appointment for a weird thing on his toe. It says this time is busy. And what you get is free and busy times. And you get a grid, and you can pick the times where everyone is free and say, well, here are the 3 times I'm going to propose for the meeting. That's what this is. You're not going to show your private events to coworkers. They're going to see that you're busy during those times. They don't have to know why. But if and this is kind of a neat thing for today because a lot of people are working from home and have wide open schedules probably. But, with more and more people working from home regardless, our days are a mix of personal and work related responsibilities, and you can block those off and let the other people in your organization see when you're busy.
And you can link Google calendars, not just Outlook calendars.
That's right. It's So that's, I think between Outlook.com and Gmail, that's probably some huge percentage of the personal email or, calendar accounts, we'll call them out in the world. So, that's good.
And then they also talked about the family safety app, which had been kind of rumored as being part of this announcement. It's only for mobile, which is interesting, iOS and Android. It's what you would expect, right? It lets you keep track of where your kids are, how they're spending their time. There's also even a driving module, so you can see if somebody who's driving is distracted while they're driving, and the person can shut that off. The kid
can, yeah.
Well, what good is that?
Which is good.
Because you see that they turn it off, and this is a
right, and then you're like, why did you turn that off?
Right.
Yep.
This used to happen when my kid, when Mark was home and he was a teenager and he was being an idiot, he would turn off, Find My iPhone, and that's how that's when he'd get a phone call. You can't do that. I mean, but that's not Microsoft's job to parent. It's our job. So that's fine. I will say, by the way, just real quick, I think a lot of that stuff, some of that stuff might be Android only. I'm unclear on some of the mobile stuff. A lot of it seemed like it was only Android. So.
It is. Or like it'll have very much reduced functionality on iPhones, which is kind of the way things are. Right.
And when you think about it, this functionality that we only barely described is the type of thing when you think about the digital well-being stuff that's in phones and the screen time stuff that we're all ignoring now. Maybe this should be part of the platform. So it's great that Microsoft's doing it, and they can do this across, the web, Windows, Xbox, and now mobile. That's great. It's fine. It makes sense. But I mean, when you think about it, this should be a feature of Android or iOS. And maybe it will be eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think anything else in the main event.
Just real quick, also in background about the family safety thing. Family safety is something that Microsoft has had for a really long time. And it's really interesting to see how it changed over time, because it used to be part of Windows. And, of course, as the world has kind of evolved, where a kid having a computer is not yes, they would do have computers, and you may not want them to go to porn sites and whatever. I mean, that stuff's still kind of important. It moved into being more of an online service type of thing that you could implement in Windows, but that helped them make it cross-platform. So it was something they could apply on Xbox as well, et cetera. And it's what I'm sure enabled this to happen. But it's really interesting that when they talk about family safety today in 2020, and there's an app, that app is Android and maybe iOS, but not really Windows.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk more about Credge, because Credge was the other big theme, right? So one thing I thought was going to be in the subscription for Microsoft 365 Consumer, but ended up being in Credge was remember I kept saying, I think there's going to be a password manager. There is not a password manager. There's a password monitor.
Right.
Well, okay, you can Sherlock Grammarly, but don't Sherlock LastPass.
Well,
no, it's not like LastPass.
But Edge has a password manager, right? So this actually
all
makes
browsers
sense.
do. It's not.
Yeah, but I mean But the notion of Microsoft, actually, I shouldn't say that. Microsoft creating a password manager,
they could do it,
that you could use elsewhere does make sense.
Apple does it.
Yeah, they could.
They don't call it a password manager, but it has all the features of it.
No, but the monitor is different, right? So this lets you see if your username and saved password gets leaked to the dark web, and they will show you a notification if that happens. So it's more like a security defense kind of thing, not like save your passwords and across devices. It's not that. I think it's good.
Do you think that
Chrome has a plugin for
feature
that?
Of Edge?
Google did a plugin for Chrome that does.
I think a lot of people have it, right?
Yeah,
like it's
Firefox
kind of
does. Yeah,
a common thing. But it's good. So there is no brand new password manager that's part of the Microsoft 365 consumer subscription. I had so many people tweeting to me like, "Where's the password manager?" I'm like, "Okay, it was a rumor. It didn't happen."
Would have been a good feature, actually. Right. But now you could see how those rumors happen. People see something, and they say, "Oh, that must be a password manager." No,
right?
Yeah,
it says the word password, but it's something a little different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they also announced collections for people who are interested in collections will also be coming to Edge on iOS and Android. So collections is a thing where you can collect information.
Is this Joe? You haven't paid your bill, Joe.
Not that kind of collection.
Also not that Joe.
I get that call all the time.
Also not that Joe.
I had a SIM that apparently hadn't been unused for long enough. And this poor guy apparently had skipped out on his college loans because I was getting texts, calls, everything.
That's
nonstop.
Terrible.
Oh, it's awful.
It's awful. Ugh.
Bill collectors.
No, this is the collections where you can go to the web and pick up different sites and then have it saved for you for later in case you want to see all these things collected into a single place. This was supposed to be like one of the big Windows 10 features forever, right? I don't even think it's out yet for Windows 10 still, right? Or it's in preview maybe.
Yeah,
or
I
it's
remember
been
we were talking about this,
channel.
and they canceled it, didn't they? They put it off.
No,
wasn't it?
They didn't kill collections, did they?
No, it's collections in Windows.
Yeah.
No, it's in Edge it's in the browser today.
But remember, we were talking about this as being a Windows feature for a while, and then they pulled back on it.
This with sets.
Oh.
Sets.
Oh, I am. How's this different?
Yeah.
Well, sets was just browser tabs for applications.
Where you could set aside a collection of tabs that you had together. Like everything I'm researching on blah, right?
No.
Wasn't that sets?
No, it wasn't sets. It was browser. It was like browser-like
I'm
tabs.
just glad
in
Mary Jo
Windows
is as
and
confused as I am.
I am.
I don't know what the difference is, Paul.
Let me look.
So if you had like a File Explorer window, you could hit Control-T and open a new tab and have a second File Explorer window, or you could have I guess you could combine applications.
Like browser tabs for your desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not collections.
What's
that's
collections?
Right. Collections is
a
different.
feature of the browser when you're researching something and you want to save intelligent links
browser
to
tabs on steroids.
Yeah.
No, it's not about browser tabs. It's just, in fact, one of the things they announced was an addition to collections where you can open a collection as tabs, but that's something that hasn't happened yet.
No, that's right.
That confused the hell out of me. I'm sorry. I was like, it really made me doubt.
I'm looking it up now.
memory.
Sets was supposed to let you group app data, websites, and other information in tabs.
Okay.
That was Sets.
In Windows. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In Windows, built into Windows.
To
And they
Explorer,
killed that.
Right.
They killed that.
I remember that was a feature. We were talking about it. Then they said, no, we're not going to do it.
And then
Collections is you have a pane. Right. Collections, you have a pane along the side of your browser. And say you're looking at a bunch of cameras.
Yeah.
And you want to compare the prices of the cameras.
Yeah.
You pull things over into
this is exactly what I just said. Okay.
Okay, maybe you did. I'm reiterating it.
I know it's better when you say it, but
It's really better when I say it.
No, but
It's
Leo's so
clearer.
slow. I had to explain like I'm a fifth grader.
when you say it. I will give you that. Okay.
Anyway, collections coming to iOS and Android. If anybody likes collections, maybe you'll care.
And the point there, of course, is that you have collections you've maybe created on the desktop, and now they're going to sync to mobile and vice versa.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah.
It's like tab sets.
Oh boy. Stump the experts.
So what's the difference between Docker and a virtual machine? Now, again, I don't.
Yeah. What's the difference between a container and a blah? No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. What else is in Credge? Smart copy.
Jeez.
Smart copy. Select, copy, and paste content from a website and maintain the rich web format. So if you have images and links, it stays, and you don't have to like mess with it because it'll all hang together.
We'll save the formatting. That is very useful. That's because you want like an arbitrary region of a page. You can just select it all, and it will. Because you do that today, you can kind of paste it in as text, but you lose all the images.
Yeah, it's terrible. Or you do a screenshot, and then it's just a picture.
Yeah, then it's just a dumb picture. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Is that called collections, or is that?
Oh.
It's called Smart Copy. Okay. Not to be confused with what's the thing they have, the snipping tool's new name, which is, I never can remember.
Yeah.
Snip and Sketch. Not to be confused with Snip and Sketch.
Snip and Sketch. Right, that is a new name. Yeah. Screen snip.
Yeah.
Whatever. We're really.
What else?
Careening else here. Vertical tabs.
Oh, vertical tabs. I think that's going to be fantastic. I am very excited about. Because
kind of
I don't know how many tabs. How many tabs do you all have open on your browser right now?
Right now,
I probably have 20, 25.
Yeah, I've never been a big tab person.
No?
I just recently discovered pinning it. I know I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
In Firefox. No. So I have 1, 2, 3.
Pinning is not for everybody, Leo. But you know what? I've been doing that recently as kind of a workflow change. So I have my email, calendar, and Twitter pinned.
Yeah, we do so much stuff now in browsers that it makes it like, this is a permanent tab. It's a little smaller. Mm-hmm. So I have 5 pinned and 3 regulars. That's not bad. 25. I don't know. Why do you not ever close anything? Gibson's
I close
worse.
them when I finish working with it. I close it, but I have them open in the morning.
Clutter. To me,
it's like a reminder.
And then you
it's like a reminder.
It's like when I icons on your desktop. It's just silly.
When I start my day, I flip through all my tabs to see what is open and why did I keep them open, like to remind myself.
Context.
Yeah.
Context switching is one of the hardest things to do in computing.
It is. I know. I have the most simple.
That collections?
No, that's sets. That's definitely sets there.
No, it's weird. Like I use Notepad to write, but then that's the most simple possible thing. But then my tab situation is like a disaster and out of control. So, yeah.
Yeah. I go up and down. I'll go up on the laptop upstairs and it's like 30 tabs and they sit there and kind of control W. You know, they're all, because I always, you know, as I'm working on something, I'm researching and researching and researching. And then you've got this like, mostly, it's not nonsense, but it's stuff you don't really need anymore. Yeah. It was like of the moment.
Yep. I know. And I know some people that just drives them absolutely insane. Like when they see people have looked over my shoulder at my tabs and they're like, oh my goodness. But if I could have those vertically. I think the first time I did that to you, you were writing a notepad and I literally said, are you writing in Notepad? like as if you had pulled out a scroll and a feather and then started, you know. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Do you do pinning, Mary Jo? Do you know about?
She's a
professional
writer.
Yeah, I'm a trained professional. She says.
Yeah, she uses Notepad.
Yeah.
It's not a gag.
No, I never use it. I use it in full screen mode too, which is even more.
Oh, you're gonna love my coming version of .NET Pad then, because it's all about full screen.
Full screen, baby.
Oh, nice.
It's the future.
If you want to brand it better, just call it distraction-free mode.
Yeah,
people like that.
Yes.
That's great.
I get rid of the Chrome of the application.
Yeah.
If you will.
No buttons, no knobs,
so to speak.
Yep.
I'm gonna look into that. That's actually that's doable. Distraction. I like it.
Oh yeah. What else? I forgot. In private search with Bing, in case anybody really has been hankering for that. No. Okay.
The other thing is like this builds on top of I think they've released 2 now roadmaps that they put out, and they are implementing a lot of feedback related new features in Edge over the next, probably couple of months, I guess, but including some of the stuff we talked about before, like the ability to remove Bing from the new tab page if that's what you want. Use your own photo in the new tab page, et cetera. So there's a bunch of stuff coming.
Yep. The Cridge team, they never sleep.
They have kind of been on a tear.
I thought it would end up being kind of more Chrome-ish. And it's really clear they're just using the rendering engine from Chrome, and everything else is really custom built. It's kind of like buying the Tesla Roadster. It's a Lotus Elise.
Oh.
But inside it's Google Chrome.
It's like Lotus without none of the terribleness, or without any of the terribleness of Lotus. That's actually, exactly the Edge marketing is pretty much exactly that. Just replace Lotus with Chrome.
Yeah. Actually, in the case of the Tesla, they took the only good thing about the Lotus app, which is the engine, but they kept the ridiculous body. So maybe some people liked it. Okay, let me take a little time out because you guys have been working so hard explaining sets, collections, and all that.
Explaining collections and collections and that other collections.
Re-explaining the collections.
I don't understand. How does it work again? You have to, explain it to me like I'm a Linux user.
Oh, boy.
Oh.
All right, open a terminal. Type in collection.
I just want to say, /.
Collections-add.
You need a shell command. Now, if you're using bash.
You're not running as an admin, are you, Leo? Could you elevate the
You have
terminal?
to sudo here. This has been so far a really remarkable April Fool's Day free show, and I just want to thank you two.
Jeez.
No, seriously.
Banned it. No, at ZDNet it's banned. Like you can't do it.
I was wondering if, I had 2 ways of thinking, like maybe we need some levity so there'll be some really fun April Fool's stuff, or maybe, and I think this is what happened, people are so burned out with fake news, bad news, trying to figure out what's going on. The last thing I need is an article about how Walt Disney just bought Google. I mean, it's just like, please,
Yeah.
Let's not. Let's just not.
Enough.
Nobody misses April Fool's Day. Nobody.
Oh,
Especially not in this climate and this time.
Well, I think that's it. I think we have enough on our plate.
Like an April Fool's joke that you thought was legitimately funny in the past 10 years? I mean,
never. And then there. Remember, Google would felt like they'd spent their entire year.
Yeah.
Instead of doing something,
spend that time fixing Android. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe make a phone that doesn't look stupid. Could you do that?
Oh, Lord. Well, so this is, I say that because this is, you may be tempted to say, oh, Leo, you're making this up when you start talking about wasabi, but I'm not. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is hot cloud storage done right. And when I say it's 80% cheaper than its chief competition, Amazon S3, you might say that can't possibly be. It is. It is 1/5 the cost. It's even cheaper. It's so affordable. It's less expensive than on-premises storage. So for those of you who are saying, I'm going to stay with on-prem because it's more secure, it's less expensive, you're wrong. It's not. But I would argue Wasabi is not only less expensive, but more reliable than a hard drive over there. 11 nines of durability. That means on average one file every 649,000 years. We can even make it better, though, because Wasabi is hosted in premier Tier 4 data centers, highly secure, and yes, fully redundant. So your data is backed up by Wasabi to multiple centers. Data stored in the Wasabi cloud is always encrypted at rest, even if the requesting party doesn't specify encryption. That's just automatic. They follow the industry's best security models and design practices. And they do regular integrity checking on every file that you store there. One bit is off, they get a copy from the other redundant Tier 4 storage, and they say, okay, we got to make sure that... So your data is just so safe. They have access control mechanisms, bucket policies, access control lists to selectively grant permissions. Your data, this is, I really think, a good feature. Your data is immutable. So you can say this data cannot be altered. This cannot be even by me, without jumping through some hoops. No ransomware can modify it. That's really important. It's HIPAA compliant. It's FINRA compliant. It's CJIS compliant. And again, no April Fool's joke. It's 80% cheaper and 6 times faster than the industry leader. And unlike S3, there's no charge for egress. It's just a flat fee, $5.99 per terabyte per month. That's it. And you will use the API, or you might want to, because it's the S3 API. You already know it. And there are lots of tools out there that support the S3 API that you can use with Wasabi. No complex storage tiers, none of that. Just flat rate pricing on super fast, hot cloud storage, super reliable, super secure. The only negative is it's not Microsoft, Google, or Amazon. And the boss is going to say, what's this? What's Wasabi? But you got a lot of ammunition now. You could say, boss, this is the best. This is, nobody knows yet about this. This is the latest in hot cloud storage. And you're going to save 80%. That ought to get her attention. Just, calculate the savings for yourself. We have a free trial of unlimited storage for a month if you go to wasabi.com. By the way, just like the hot horseradish on your sushi, wasabi.com. There's a free trial link right there. If you use the code WINDOWS, normally they say, oh, here, play with a terabyte. But if you use the code WINDOWS, you get unlimited, no limit. So you can blast a ton of stuff up there, mess with it, see how fast it is. That's a big one, right? How quickly you can get stuff up there, how quickly you can get stuff back down. Remember, no charge for egress. So go ahead, play with it. Join the movement. Migrate your data to the cloud and do it with confidence and do it for the right price. Go to wasabi.com. They've got to be, honestly, this has to scare the big boys. This is what it should cost, frankly. Wasabi.com. Use the offer code WINDOWS. I know, of course, it's an enterprise product. A lot of enterprises are using it. But I'm also starting to hear from a lot of our listeners who are just using it for themselves because the price is so good. It's so convenient. It's so easy to use. So it's a great cloud storage solution. I want you to check it out. Unlimited free trial for a month. Wasabi.com with the offer code WINDOWS. Thank you, Wasabi. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. We're talking about Windows. We're talking about, speaking of the cloud, What was the number I saw? Microsoft said 772%.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
No, wait. I have to do my rant
There was a decimal
first.
problem in that number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It did seem like a large number.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
You remember in The Empire Strikes Back when Obi-Wan Kenobi said that his story about Luke's father was true from a certain point of view? It's like that.
Yeah.
Depends how you look at it. All right. Well, what do you want to talk about next? I don't want to jump the gun.
All right. I want to talk about. Sorry, having a weird sound thing happen. I want to talk about how Microsoft is rebranding so many things with Microsoft 365 and how confusing this is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, Microsoft 365 meant something very specific.
Interesting.
It meant Windows plus Office 365 plus enterprise mobility and security. That was the definition of Microsoft 365. Yeah. Now everything is getting branded Microsoft 365, whether or not it has Windows in it, whether or not it has Intune in it, whether or not it has any kind of a standard set of tools for security. So this week we saw Microsoft say a bunch of their Office 365 small business plans are going to get rebranded as Microsoft 365. None of these things have Windows in it. The thing called Office 365 Business Essentials is now going to be called Microsoft 365 Business Basic. That's the version I use of Office 365.
Yep.
It doesn't include the Office apps, but it still is going to be rebranded Microsoft 365. Business Premium's getting rebranded to Business Standard with Microsoft 365 in front of that. And Office Pro Plus.
This is the dumbest one.
Office 365 Pro Plus is being rebranded as Microsoft 365 Apps.
What?
So let's hover on that one for a second, because Office 365 Pro Plus, aside from being the kind of commercial SKU they talk about the most for some reason, is the one enterprise SKU that is changing to a Microsoft 365 brand. It's the only one. It is the same as, from a functional perspective, from the user's perspective, it is identical to what used to be called Office 365 Business Premium, maybe, or whatever, whatever the name was. That's the one I use. So it's the version that gives you the applications on up to 5 computers, the 1 terabyte of cloud storage, and access to the online servers like Exchange Online, et cetera.
Right.
The people often ask, well, why do they have two things that are the same? The thing I just described is for small and medium-sized businesses. What used to be called Office 365 Pro Plus is for the enterprise, and it comes with additional licensing perks that don't mean anything to anybody, but you get, fast track, application compatibility, blah, blah, blah. There's other stuff, but, from the user's perspective, it's the same thing. So, yeah, it is. If anything, maybe even more confusing than you're making it sound.
It's way more. No, because then there's these whole. I don't mind
the change. What I mind is they just didn't do it across the board.
Right. It's very inconsistent. Very, very inconsistent. Office 365 for enterprise continues to exist. Office 365 for first line continues to exist.
Right.
Office 365 for education continues to exist. And Office 365 for government continues to exist. But there's a bunch of other things that also continue to exist with the Microsoft 365 name, like Microsoft 365 F1, E3, and E5. Those stay exactly the same, even though they do include Windows and enterprise mobility plus security. This is like unbelievably confusing.
They should have changed all of this immediately, but I have to think that one of the things they're planning for what used to be Ignite is the final switchover of all the enterprise, and I should say all the commercial stuff, because the commercial encompasses not just the stuff we already described, the small and medium-sized business stuff, but also enterprise, government, and education.
Yeah. So
it's confusing. It is really confusing, because they, in many cases, and you just described some of them, have Microsoft 365 SKUs for certain business segments and Office 365 SKUs.
Yeah,
I think what they need to do is consolidate that and just stick with Microsoft 365. I agree that there is still a confusion there because I guess
some have Windows.
Some have Windows. So is there a need for enterprise SKUs that don't have enterprise and Intune? Yeah, there is. So, I mean, we as outside observers will complain because of the confusion of all these SKUs, but the reality is for big organizations, and this is truer the bigger they get, that they have the ability to cherry pick the things that they want for certain groups of users. That these guys over here may have specific needs that requires them to get whatever this Microsoft Office 365 thing is. These guys over here have different needs. So there's a business reality to it where it does kind of make sense, but my God, it is like this multi-tentacled monster of, it's really hard to figure out. It just got harder. It's got harder.
When they sent me the blog post to look at on this, I just sent back a note. I was like, what? Like,
see, what I'm imagining is you went out on that balcony.
What?
He went out and screamed, and then some guy down in the sea was like, shut up. Shut up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Welcome to New York.
No, that was when I took a picture of my cat and I put it on Twitter.
Love that picture.
No, I was sitting there talking to him. I go, so, okay, look, some of these have Windows, some don't. This one doesn't. This one does. And
what the animal is worried about is that the person that feeds them seems like she might be going insane. It is very important that my food supply not be cut off.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
I sometimes yell at the newspaper.
You know what it reminded?
My dog comes over and puts her head in my lap.
It'll be all right, Paul. Yeah. It's going to be okay. This kind of reminds me
of when they made everything have .NET in the name at Microsoft for a while. Yes. Remember that? Yeah. Kind of reminds me of this, but okay.
That was a cliff they'd step back from. They were going to rename Windows to Windows.NET.
Yep,
Windows.NET Server. Everything was Exchange.NET, SQL Server. Everything was going to be called
there
.NET.
There he is. Look at it.
Sriracha resting cat face. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He was like, enough with the branding thing. My goodness.
Just looked at you and he was like, shut up. He is a New York cat.
He is.
I'm sleeping here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my rant about the name. I think I get why they want to have one brand, but the fact that the one brand meant one thing and now it means something different.
Well, but they didn't go from two brands to one. They went from two to two, but they just jumbled around some of the.
No, they went from 2 to like 4 because Microsoft 365 has a bunch of different meanings now. To me,
right. I agree. I think like I said, I think this is something they will clear up over time. Ignite seems like the obvious time frame for that. I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt as I do, So we'll see.
Okay. Like you do.
I mean, I don't go on rants like Mary Jo does. I'm just saying.
Oh, really? Come on. Anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah.
Well, that was a minor rant. You got to take some lessons from Paul here.
I do.
You got to let it out. You're not going to be able to sleep at night unless you just blow out all the steam.
Sriracha bore the brunt of my ranting on this topic.
Are you kidding me?
Are you?
Yeah.
We're in New York. What are you talking about?
It's a great picture.
Funny.
It's really funny. Really great picture. All right. Now, do you want to talk about the cloud?
Yeah, the what now?
The cloud.
Yeah, sure.
The COVID cloud.
Wait. Oh, no. We're not even close to that, Leo. What did
I do? Where did I jump ahead? I must have jumped ahead.
We're on Slack. We're up to Slack now.
Oh, yeah. I did. I jumped way ahead. All right. Sorry. Slack says it will integrate with Teams chat. Really?
And
it did? What does that mean? Does that mean I can use Teams and Slack? I can use Slack and Teams?
I believe it's just the chat functionality, right?
It is.
We're a Slack house, so I could, if I wanted to, I could have. Because Slack does have an API. I mean, I can do Slack with an IRC client. So is that it is? So it's like kind of like a CI.
If you're in Slack and you want to call somebody in Teams using a phone number,
nice.
You now can with this thing called Microsoft Teams Calls that they put out in beta today.
Nice.
The Slack's extensibility model, is it like, do they call them apps? That's why I said Slack. Are they called apps? So I think the way they did this was to create
an app,
a Slack app or a Slap.
Yeah.
And
Slap.
for Teams, I think.
Yeah, they did.
I'm not a Slack user.
Yeah, they did. So this is kind of interesting. When they announced that they were going to do this last week, Stuart Butterfield said this on an analyst call. I immediately asked Microsoft and Slack, I'm like, so are you guys working together on this? This seems really weird. And Microsoft finally sent me a note like, no, they're using publicly available APIs. We're not helping them with this, right? So yeah, but they can because they're publicly available and anybody can develop hooks into Teams if you want. So,
I mean, someone would have done this. This sounds like a nice project for some third party, but better coming from Slack. I'd be fruit flies in here for some reason. Maybe I died. I don't know.
It's summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we just threw that in there because it's connected to Microsoft 365, like everything is anymore.
I'm starting to get some Teams envy. I kind of wish we weren't a Slack house, but it's very hard. We've talked about this before. It's hard for me to shift everybody to another.
Yeah.
Teams is the shiny new thing. I mean, I think a lot of the excitement around Teams is just that it's, they started from scratch 3 years ago. They've been building it up pretty rapidly. Yeah. So there's a lot going on there, but Slack just kind of sits there and gets it done, I guess. I assume
we're happy with it. Slack is a little too happy. A little too colorful.
Would you call it slap happy?
Fun and Teams seems more businessy.
Yeah.
Although they want it to be fun. They have fun envy with Teams, I think.
Well, and I think they look at the reason people love Slack is because employees love to use it. But as an employer, I kind of want people to get back to work. Stop putting the animated
Stop
GIFs.
putting stickers on there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little too fun.
Right.
So.
No, Teams will get there, Leo. Don't worry.
Yeah.
They're on their way.
Yeah. We used to use HipChat, which was very serious. And then we moved to a Slack, and it's fun. Silly fun, though. It shouldn't be fun. Work should not be fun.
It should not be fun.
Work should not be fun.
But could it be fulfilling at least?
Well, yeah, you do that on your own time.
You could be fulfilled.
Find fulfillment on your own time.
Pretty sure,
buddy.
These days all the time is my own time, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, that's why you're doing what you do. Okay, 5th CU for Windows 10 version 2004.
Yeah, this is just.
What does that mean? Even I don't even know.
So again, we just every once in a while we just have this conversation. Microsoft essentially stopped developing Windows 10 version 2004 back in December, meaning adding new features to it. So it's feature complete. They haven't released it to the public yet, but in the months since they've been releasing these cumulative updates that are basically bug and security fixes. And so they've released 5 of them. They released the 5th one. Was it yesterday? I think. I don't remember. But the other day, recently. So, the big question with this next version of Windows 10 is, of course, when is it going to come out? Every time a Patch Tuesday comes by and it comes and goes without it, we push it forward. I mean, it's April, so anything could happen.
I know. I still kind of think we're going to see this in April. Maybe not on Patch Tuesday, but sometime in April, I think they'll kick off the rollout. It feels like they got to do it fairly soon.
I don't see any reason not to do it. I know there are horrible things going on in the world and so forth, but it's a minor update. It does require a full install. You have to reboot and all that stuff. And, it's like a version upgrade. But I think that's the point of all this testing is they want to make sure this goes as smoothly as it can and as smoothly as 1903, I think. Yeah, 1903 did a year ago. So we'll see.
Right. And I've had people emailing me saying, so do you think they're going to just not do 2004 because, of what's going on in the world and blah, blah. No, they're going to do it because the second half update is going to build on top of it, just like 1903 and 1909. So they are going to have it come out this year.
This is one of those things I still think people don't quite understand. The other half of the story is that version 1909, the one that came out last fall, has hit about 30. It's 28.2% usage share on for Windows 10 installs, And it's like, oh, they finally got one right, and it's like, no, they didn't. It's like we can't win at this game, so we're going to change the game. You got to remember, 1909 is not even though they call it a feature update, it's not a major version of Windows. It's just it's just one of many cumulative updates that you can apply to 1903. So when they apply, when they release software other cumulative updates for 1903, they release the same one for 1909. There is no difference.
Right.
So maybe they got it right in the sense that rather than do 2 true feature updates a year, they do one, and then they do the second one as a cumulative update. That's cool, but they can't do that this year unless they release 2004 first. So
no, they're going to have it out. It's coming. It's coming like in the next month, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I know there wasn't a build today, right? So far, there's no new build.
No, but it's early. I mean, we could still get one.
That's true.
One little hidden bit of news, in a way. AdDuplex, the folks that do this usage share report every month, often look at Surface usage share. And one of the things that came out of the Surface releases from last fall was that they're not selling very well. Only Surface Pro 7 has seen any real uptick in usage, and the Surface Laptop 3 and Surface Pro X have not. Like, they're not selling well at all. This month, they declined to publish numbers because they didn't change. So if you look at the last report they did, which is actually from back in January, what they basically told me on the side, they didn't put this in a report, but they told me about it, was that the usage numbers have not changed in 2 months, basically, which means that those new computers are not selling well at all. Like, and look, I mean, things have happened in the world since and whatever, but they got off to kind of a slow start, and apparently now they're just not out there in the world. Like, you just don't see it. They're not seeing them in the usage numbers. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And I don't know how that impacts what happens with Surface going forward, because obviously we're looking forward to a new version of Surface Go, which was a fairly successful device, and then a new version of Surface Book, which from a unit sales perspective was not a big success, but is certainly popular with certain types of people, like programmers and designers and so forth. It's a really powerful machine. So
I have a question for you on this.
Mm-hmm.
What does AdDuplex measure? Like, are they measuring ads that are delivered somehow through the Microsoft Store?
Yeah, this is based on data from over 100,000 computers. Yeah.
So it makes me kind of wonder if people are just not getting apps through the store as much.
Yeah, it's certainly,
right?
Yeah. Except
Maybe.
that there are apps that come in Windows 10 that have ads. There are, Look, I mean, no survey is ever going to be perfect.
No.
Someone would say, well, this can't possibly measure anything about enterprises and whatever. But honestly, I feel like a lot of people that are in any business now are doing things on their computers, whatever they want. So I don't think that that's all that really valid or is a big worry. But the way I would say this is, this represents computers that are out in the world, like that real people have. I mean, yes, I mean, certainly the Windows Store or the Microsoft Store has not been a huge success story. But it is a good number of computers. I mean, it's not like it's not a survey of 10,000 computers. I mean, it's over 100,000.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll give you that.
And I also say, as far as Surface goes, just another, this isn't my own data point, I guess. I would say that people who go out of the way to buy a Microsoft computer would be more likely than other computer users to install apps in the Microsoft Store.
I am an outlier in your data there.
If Notepad
but
were
you
in
also
the
use
store.
Notepad to write your articles. So I mean,
they should put Notepad in the store just to improve the numbers.
If you would use the Notepad version that was in the store, briefly, you too would have been a Microsoft Store user.
There you go.
That's true.
Hey,
no, I do have some, but
I saw a rumor about Surface Laptop 3. It's far too early to be.
4 actually was Surface Laptop
4. I meant. You have 3 now, Mary Jo, right?
Yeah.
Too early.
I mean, they just put the 3 out.
I think people are confusing what's what, right? Like Surface Book 3 is coming.
Oh.
And I think some people
I think they saw Geekbench numbers or something. So how sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a Surface Book 3.
have also been Geekbench leaks on Surface Go 2, right? There's been a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. And it's going to have some next gen, Pentium Gold type processor, and I believe like an M3 as an
M3 Core M3
as a upper, high end model.
High end. Yeah.
High end, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
High end for Go.
Yep.
A paper written by an academic, which Paul is quick to point out is not the same thing as an academic paper.
Yes. Well, so this happened back in February, and I looked at this, and I just, like viscerally, you have to understand that this can't be true.
Wait, this is the one we talked about that said the Brave was the best.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then they said Chrome and Safari and Firefox are just as good as each other from a privacy perspective,
and
Edge and Yandex are the worst.
Yeah. That was weird.
What?
Yeah, that was
weird. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, but
I'll be honest, it almost felt like it was paid for by Brave.
Yeah. Okay.
It was. I mean, I would say Firefox and Brave are maybe neck and neck, and maybe Firefox in some respects is better. To say Brave tops all of the others was a little puzzling to me. I mean, Brave was a sponsor. I love Brave. I use Brave, but is it that much better than Firefox?
I think to me the big takeaway is there is no way that Google Chrome is not the worst. Google Chrome exists.
That's right.
Solely to make sure that those connections between the websites you visit are tracked and are given to the advertisers that form 80% of their revenue.
His sense was that Microsoft had added telemetry to Edge, right?
Well, I think that it is definitely telemetry. It's something you can turn off. It's so anyway. Microsoft provided me some data points I published. I've gotten a lot of crap for this. There are a lot of people who are like, well, I don't, if you think this is true, you need to prove it. Or you're like, I don't know why you're such a Microsoft cheerleader. I mean, why would these guys make this up? And it's like, what? I
can think of lots of reasons why these guys.
I'm just trying to use common sense here, guys. Yeah. Microsoft. Look, there was a time when Microsoft wishes they could have gone down this path, but advertising is not their business. Edge is a solution for the problems of Chrome. It is not a problem in and of itself. Yes, you might want to do other things with extensions. If you're worried about tracking and so forth, that's true of any browser. But this is like, I don't know.
It seemed weird. I remember looking at that when it came out and thinking there's something about this that isn't right.
It's just not right.
Not because I think Chrome is so much worse than Edge or Edge is so much better than Chrome. It just felt like it came out of nowhere and everybody was like, who is this person who's saying this?
It didn't get a lot of press, right? But what I've discovered, what this is like? It's like in the open source world, there is still this segment of that population that will never trust Microsoft because of what happened 20 years ago. They just will never trust Microsoft. Right. And like there's these big pushes like, we really love Visual Studio Code, but we can't stand that it's from Microsoft. So what we want to have is some open source version of Visual Studio Code that will literally use Visual Studio Code extensions, add-ins or whatever they're called, but it just won't be from Microsoft. Like that's like these people can't get past this. And like that there's a segment of people who are like, well, remember they called Linux a cancer. I mean, we can't trust these guys. And it's like those guys are all gone. They're not there anymore.
It's like, wait, are you still there?
Yeah. So I don't know. As much as I love to have my technical credentials, challenged on a daily basis on my own website, I will just say that what I said earlier, which is you can't read what they write about Chrome and come away thinking that this makes any sense. It's like we all know this is not true.
The metric he was using was they wired up the browsers, by the way, without any additional extensions, just out of the box, and they wired them up for phoning home. Right. With what they presumed was user identifiable fingerprint. Although they point out we can't really be sure because we can't really tell what's being sent back.
But the other thing is, so the initial when this was first brought to my attention, to the person who brought this to my attention, this was damning evidence that Microsoft was at it again, tracking our movements around the internet. And it's like, guys, Microsoft, I think we can all agree Microsoft has a telemetry, problem. Like they're into telemetry.
Yeah.
This is how they get feedback about how the product works. It's how they improve it. You need to understand the rationale and the purpose, the meaning of what it is they're doing, not just they were connecting to a Microsoft server at some point in the transaction. Like, yeah, we are, or they are, or whatever. But do you think they're building up a database of what you're doing around the internet and who you are, and then they're giving this to advertisers? This is not what Microsoft does.
So Microsoft, according to this study, sends back a hash, much like the hash they use for authentication, right? The hardware-based hash to Microsoft. It's a hardware UUID. They can't. That doesn't say anything about how Microsoft might use it, but I mean, is Microsoft denying that they do that? And it can't. By the way, that behavior can't be disabled. Right. It's automatic.
I disclosed the browser. I don't know. What I have is what Microsoft said in response to each of these charges. And what it basically boils down to is we're not violating anyone's privacy. We have no need to do that. There's no benefit to us to doing that. Let's see if I can find the exact thing.
They say Microsoft
Edge asks for permission to collect diagnostic data for product improvement purposes and provides the capability to turn it off at any point. That's what Microsoft says. This diagnostic data may contain information about websites you visit. However, it is not used to track your browsing history or URLs specifically tied to you.
They don't address this UUID issue, though, do they?
I think that is the way they address it. That's their response, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the diagnostic data contains information about websites you visit, but that information is not.
Yeah, but okay.
Or your history is not tied to you.
Okay.
Their claim is that this is a privacy nightmare because they're collecting that, and the inference is they are tying it to you, and they're saying that they are not. They have no idea what Microsoft's doing with it. Microsoft is telling you.
No, they don't.
They're not telling you what they're doing, but they're telling you what they're not doing with it, which is they're not tying it to you.
Microsoft says you could turn it off. The guy disputes that. He says it turns itself back on.
Okay.
So yes, I mean Microsoft's not lying. You can turn it off. It's just that it won't stay on.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, who knows? But I can also understand why people might not want a fingerprint sent back to Microsoft's server.
Here's what I'll say. We have a lot of great browser choices. You can use the browser that you trust from the company that you trust. My contention is only that Microsoft is a much more trustworthy company than Google. And to place Google Chrome on the same footing as Safari and Firefox is ludicrous. And to claim that browser is more private than Edge is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. Edge exists solely to eliminate the tracking problems with Chrome.
Right.
That's why it exists. It literally de-Googles the browser.
Why does Microsoft say they do send this back? They say it's for improvement of the product?
Yeah, diagnostic data for product improvement.
Okay.
I think the idea. I mean, look, now we have to read into the sentences that they provided, right? Because they only provide a couple of sentences about this. If you think about diagnostic data for product improvement purposes, et cetera, why might you need to know the name of a website? Because something went wrong, and they need to know what website it was, so they can go and test against it. Not so they can be like, man, can you believe what Paul was doing today on the internet?
Yeah.
And that speaks to the intent. That was my original issue when it was brought to my attention. Like, what's the intent of this? Those sentences do describe the intent. It has nothing to do with violating your privacy. It has everything to do with improving the product. Now, like I said, they have a telemetry problem because, Windows 10 and what I mean by that is it's a
perception problem.
It's a perception, exactly. In Windows 10, they can't. I don't know why they don't do this. They just don't give you an off switch. Just turn it off.
Yeah.
No one would use it. Some people would, but most people would never even know it existed. Just do it. Yeah. What they're saying here is that they do this. They allow you to turn it off. So if you don't want to provide feedback to Microsoft, you don't have to.
The thing that bothered me wasn't the Edge thing, which, I see why it would bother you. But they also said Firefox wasn't as good. And I always thought Firefox was the default for privacy. And I don't think I'm alone in that.
Brave, because of the way
Brave was
Brave's not perfect,
designed to block all this, to not do this.
Yeah,
that was the whole point of it.
You must have followed the Safari news when Safari came out with very aggressive tracking protection this past week.
Yeah.
They actually singled out Brave and said, even Brave has this notion of an acceptable sites list that they will make exceptions for because, it kind of breaks the internet. And Apple's deal was like, look, we've solved this problem. We have another way of doing that. We've submitted it as a web standard. And in the meantime, we're just going to break the web. It shouldn't work this way. We're not going to let things track you.
I totally agree with them. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Break the web. Why not?
Yeah. The web does. If the web is doing this, then break it.
Kim Kardashian can break the web. We can break the web.
Sure.
Okay. No, you've made your point. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I did it in a non-ranty way, I think.
I wasn't too ranty.
All right.
I wasn't too ranty. Just remember, there's a distinction between a paper written by an academic and an academic paper.
An academic paper.
Well,
words
as
to live
people
by.
on my website pointed out, an academic paper is peer-reviewed. This was just published.
Right.
Anyone can
No,
publish.
not peer-reviewed. That's right.
I publish on the internet every day.
Yep. That's exactly right.
None of that's peer-reviewed either, but I don't,
So we had said last week Google was going to halt Chrome development, but I guess
they
not.
did.
They did, briefly.
Yeah, now it's back.
Now it's back.
Well, the reason that's important,
brief.
so they've shifted things forward. They're going to skip a couple of versions, whatever, and so that's fine. But this impacts Microsoft Edge because they're on the Chromium release schedule as well. So soon after Google announced this, I didn't actually write about it, but I saw that Microsoft announced that they too would follow the same schedule, and they're resuming soon. So there had been a pause. Most people probably are on the what do they call the stable version of Microsoft Edge. That one, I think we probably lost a couple of weeks overall, but it will be back on schedule. So
cool,
coming soon.
Now, 775%.
Yeah. When I saw that number, by the way, come through on Sunday, it was a Sunday, this past Sunday, Microsoft puts out a big update for Azure on the Azure blog. We've seen a 775% increase in the demand for our cloud services because of what's going on with COVID-19. I was like, okay, I knew it was up. But
they did say to be fair, they didn't do it in a it wasn't like a overly dramatic. It was just like update 2, it was the number was in there, But they also said I think I'm going to get the language a little bit off, but it was in those places where lockdown procedures are in place. It was something like that. Yeah. They qualified it to
but that's
in places where there are stay-at-home orders, whatever.
That's still
we've
big.
seen this explode. Yeah, it's a huge 775%.
It's gigantic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just stunned. So I'm like, I have to write about this, right? And then a couple days later, a little quiet blog correction comes out. Yeah. So by the way, that 775%, that's actually in Italy over a 1 month period. Teams calling and meeting minutes.
What?
Like,
just in Italy? Oh.
It was
only for Teams calling and meeting. Like not even all cloud services in Italy, just that in Italy.
Yep.
That's a big difference, right?
It is. I mean, look, the cloud demands. I mean, demand is surging. There's no doubt about it.
It's definitely surging. That's why I kind of believed, even though I was surprised how big it was, I kind of believed it, especially because as I've said, people are running into constraints, right? They can't spin up VMs in Europe now and
Leo,
SQL databases.
This is why you can't believe anything that Microsoft says about Edge. Those guys are violating our privacy. They hate Linux.
And they're lying about the cloud.
And they're lying about exactly. I think it was just poorly worded. If you go back and look at their post, it was not like sensational or whatever, but what they were really trying to do was show, look, we are seeing this. And they also addressed that problem that Mary Jo talked about last week, where especially in Europe, they've actually run out of capacity.
Right.
So they talked about adding capacity and shifting customers to places that have more capacity, and also making sure that medical and early responders and all those people have primary access to all of the resources they need first.
Good.
And that was the point of it. It's like, look, we're seeing, the point was mostly like, hey, Bob, I know you're trying to spin up a VM there in Indiana, but
sorry,
we got bigger concerns, than your little thing.
Yeah.
I think it was just meant to be a general.
I think it was too.
Response to the complaints.
Yeah, it was just when that number got attached to it. That's what everybody led with.
People only read the headline, and then they don't.
And their stock price shot up because of that.
Which is probably why they issued the correction, because then you get into a regulatory issue where they have made a forward-faced lie, essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, stock manipulation, whatever. Right. So the other number they shared that I want to attach actual numbers to this and not just percentages, but they said demand for Windows Virtual Desktop is up by 3 times. I'm like, 3 times what though? I want that what number there. Yeah. You're never going to get that. Yeah, there were 17 people using it before.
No,
and now there were 3 times.
A lot of people using it, and I want to get a better sense of how many. Because I think that, like, when you talk to cloud solution providers, they're all talking about how everybody is going for it. Like this is just huge and it's boosting their business. So I'm like, what's the number? I want to know.
I wonder, at some point there'll be a reckoning of sorts, and Microsoft will probably discuss this in more detail. I don't know if you're ever going to get the exact numbers you want, but I think they're based on how they handle their quarterly results. But it's very clear that cloud usage is surging during this time, and Microsoft, as the primary productivity or one of the primary productivity cloud service providers, is obviously seeing incredible usage. 300% on Microsoft or the Windows Virtual Desktop is humongous. Yeah. Again, I know we don't know what it was.
No, we don't know.
We don't know what was the 775% of what? We didn't know what that was either, really, right?
Nope. No, we didn't. No. But yeah, cloud is up.
Yeah.
Big.
Numbers are good.
Big.
It's big.
Big.
Very
it's
big.
Huge. It's huge.
Very
big numbers.
Huge. All right, Mary Jo.
Shut up over there.
Shut up over there. I'm sleeping. It's time for Xbox news.
Yeah. Is any of this important? Not really. This is just kind of sad because AMD has had a lot of problems with this kind of stuff and with other PR issues lately. But I guess apparently a hacker went on to one of the darker areas of the web and basically threatened to release all the source code for AMD's upcoming GPUs, including the one for the Xbox Series X, if they didn't pay, I think it was $100 million or whatever. And to prove that they had it, they released parts of that source code to many places, including, interestingly, GitHub, which, obviously that was taken down. AMD claims that it's not all of it. It's not business crucial. It's nothing that could help anybody. I don't know, whatever. But, I'm sure there's people in China and elsewhere, going through that code right now. I don't know. But, yeah, a little black eye for AMD. It's too bad. AMD, by the way, is the company that back in, I think it was January, released it was a CES. They released a photo of the back of the Xbox Series X that they had found on the internet that was not the back of the Xbox Series X.
Somebody made up.
They're just firing on all cylinders over there.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's too bad. And then just 2 minor things related to games. It's April 1st, so that means we're in a new month, and that means there's new games with Gold. So just, if you're paying attention to that, if you're an Xbox Live Gold subscriber, Project Cars 2 and Fable Anniversary, which is actually kind of a big release, are both available today for you folks. And then there's a kind of a dungeon crawler game called Minecraft Dungeons that Microsoft announced at X09.
I want to play this. Yeah.
It was supposed to come out in April, but they have delayed it to the end of May. In fact, my anniversary, May 26th, because of what's going on in the world. This is, I want to make sure they get
the time to release it. I'll be playing it.
Well, that's related to my tip.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if, let me look, make sure I'm not, no. Did you see that a number of high schools are doing their high school graduation in Minecraft?
Mm-hmm.
I did see that. Was so cool.
It's a good idea. It's cute. Come on.
It's really cute. And they're building this, they're building the whole campus.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the high school was. I thought that was so cool.
Well, as
It's
a
very
parent
cool.
of a child who would be graduating from high school this year, I can assure you that's not the same thing.
Quite as good.
So,
I
No,
understand.
you know.
not.
So yeah, what's he going to do?
we don't know yet, but they're not going to. They can't.
They
have
just he can't
graduations.
walk, obviously.
Maybe they do it. Maybe they'll do it later in the year. You know, if they can or whatever. I don't know.
Maybe they should start building their high school in Minecraft.
I'm sure someone has.
I'm sure somebody has.
Mm-hmm.
This is from Good Morning America. So don't sue me, GMA. But the high school, Hunter College High in New York City, and they've actually built. It's kind of beautiful. I mean, what they built is
Right.
gorgeous. So they're going to be walking in Minecraft. Look how much that looks like the real thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? Without the dump truck.
Or the
Yeah.
those fake things that are
Left the
hopping around.
sanitation guys out there.
Are there ghosts and pigs and
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, you can take that all out. You do your server. So this isn't the only high school, but this is Hunter High School, and
yeah?
it's pretty cool. I like it. I love kids. Kids today. They're taking over the world. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, kids. I hope you guys like the world we left you.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
I
treated it like a
I spoke at my daughter's
disposable item, I guess.
high school graduation. I said, "Here's the keys to the world. We're handing them over. I'm sorry about the trash in the back seat."
Yep, it's all like McDonald's wrappers and empty beer cans.
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly. We kind of
we did a great
ruined it.
job.
We ruined it
Yeah,
for
we're the-
you.
Greatest generation.
Yeah, sorry. Here's some Japanese kids having a Minecraft graduation too. It's cool. I think because this is the generation that grew up on Minecraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
They,
Yep.
they totally dig it, and they love building a place in Minecraft, and they especially like making the principal as a Minecraft character.
Yep.
It's fun. It's fun. And then, of course, when they drop the bucket of pig's blood on the principal, it's just laughs.
Then it turns into a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Does.
Like a carry.
Minecraft carry. And the day the principal went crazy.
Yep.
Let's get your tip of the week here. Related tip of the week here, Paul Thurrott.
Yeah, so obviously there's an interesting thing happening right now where everyone, not everyone, but where everyone's home, and if you're lucky, you're working from home. And there's been some sort of a surge in advice from people who just started working from home about working from home, which I find to be ludicrous. But you know what we really need is advice about other things to do, because the working part is either happening or it's not.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
a good
gonna
point.
take care of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are turning to like binge watching shows on Netflix, and things like
Tiger
that.
King?
And that's
You seen it yet?
No, but my daughter highly recommended it, and it'll be the next show we watch.
Mary Jo, you and Sriracha should sit down and watch the Big Cats. Watch
Yeah,
the
you
Big
think
Cats
we'd
play.
like it?
You get kind of burned out just watching TV.
It's
every night,
pretty
don't you?
trashy. It's
I know.
pretty trashy.
Is it a comedy? Because I hate comedy.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's
It's a documentary about the seediest group of people ever, the big cat collectors. And they're
Sure.
all
Oh,
at each
yeah.
other's throat. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But it's all the rage now on Netflix. But you're right,
I know.
Paul. After a
It's
while,
hard.
sitting on your duff, watching a
I know. You
big
don't want to
screen.
watch TV all the time,
Yeah,
right?
you got to
It's fine.
fire
You
up
should, do
Call
some
of Duty.
it for sure. You got to take your mind off what's going on. But
Right.
I also over the years. I mean, I sort of. I feel like there are different ways to spend time. You can interact as well as just passively kind of watch. And so some of the things I was thinking about was, and this occurred to me a couple of years ago, and I forgot the name of it. There's a great video game where it's you're alone and you go out to the woods and you're like a fire watcher.
Oh, I
And,
remember that. And that's all
the
you
mystery
do.
unfolds.
It's very
and-
slow. Yeah.
And that game, I thought,
See any
well,
smoke?
no, but it's
No.
no, but it's
Something
fascinating,
happens.
and there's a
Yeah.
mystery. And that was the first time I thought, like, my wife, who's not a game player, I'm like, she might enjoy this, And what's happening now, if you're not a game player, just so you know, is there are lots of game making companies and publishers that are offering games for free now, sometimes for a limited time, but sometimes just free.
Nice.
So there's lots of opportunity, and this is across like whatever console you have, PC, mobile, web, whatever.
I've been playing
All
that
kinds of
Orly
stuff.
game. I love that. You're right. It's so beautiful. Very peaceful.
I'm sorry?
The Orly game. And the winds, the winds are blowing or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of good choices. So there's something, something you might want to build into your schedule is doing something like that. But one of the other things is like, and this is something I've kind of always done myself personally, but as a sort of a proponent of learning or maybe e-learning these days, this might be a good time to take up learn software programming, something that you may not have really thought about, or maybe you thought you never had time. And
in fact, I thought
all kinds of online courses and books.
I was all excited. I thought, here's an opportunity for me. I'm going to have lots of free time. I don't have lots of free time.
Sure.
Now I'm cleaning the house.
Well, by the way, that's another one. We're doing our own version of that as well. But we're going to be doing this for months.
True.
We are going to have time. Eventually, your house will be clean.
Yep.
Yep. Something to think about. And I have my own stuff on the site. I'm not saying you have to join Thurrott Premium or anything, but I have been working on these software projects and so forth.
Follow along with that. That would be fun.
There are all kinds of courses online, and as I wrote in the notes, I mean, if I was starting today, literally starting from scratch, I would learn web development.
You bet. JavaScript, CSS,
React, something like
that. React, a good framework. TypeScript actually be a good, maybe instead of JavaScript, learn Microsoft TypeScript.
TypeScript would be a natural.
Really good one. Yeah, I agree. I'm all about the functional programming. So ClojureScript, which lets you write functional JavaScript. It's awesome.
If you go to Medium, especially, but there are a lot of places like this. So you can search for things like great startup projects for developers, and it's like there's all kinds of weather apps where there's these backend services you can connect to and make it look like the way you want to look and so forth. And anyway, just
good.
I'm gonna when this is over and we eat dinner, I'm gonna sit in front of the TV all night and do nothing. But you can't. I mean, I guess you could, but you shouldn't do that every single night. No. Also, by the way, just randomly, and these will be hard to buy if you don't already have them, unfortunately. But actual games, puzzles,
Oh yeah, definitely.
Spend time with an actual human being.
We've been doing card games. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
I've been cooking. I've been doing so many big cooking projects.
I just want to say,
it's good and bad.
I did my sourdough starter before all this happened. I just want to say, but everybody's doing sourdough. I know. I made sourdough waffles last night. It was so good.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of cooking. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah, and you're right.
Look, we're stuck.
I shouldn't be baking all that bread, but
we're involved projects, right?
Leo, we're gonna let the
keto go for a bit.
This is
you gotta let it go. You gotta let it go.
I want to build up my strength for when I get the Rona. I want to have a little extra.
By the way, there is something to that.
Maybe,
but no, there really is. I mean, I often look at people who are like super skinny, and I think to myself, what if they get sick? It's over. Like, seriously, like
no reserves.
There's nothing. Yeah.
I don't know if that's medically accurate, Paul.
I know, but that's what goes through my head.
My face fell because I read a headline that said 80% of corona fatalities in Italy were morbidly obese.
Well,
but then that's Italy. So
not morbidly obese.
Yeah, that's Italy. No, baking is fun. All the things that you've kind of put off. The nice thing about baking or cooking is it's kind of nurturing, right?
It is.
And if you're, you
can't really give people your food.
You can't. No, I want to bring my. I guess you can. No, wait a minute, that's not true. But you have to do it in the proper way. You can't hand it to them. You have to put it in a bag and then give it to them and say, debag it. I'm gonna bake a loaf of bread for my son who's in self quarantine for 2 weeks because he just got back from Asia, and I want to bring him a loaf of bread. But you're right. I have to think about the safe way to do that.
How to present it.
Yeah.
Right.
Leave it outside in a way that the raccoon won't get it by the time you get back to your car.
What would be the game to play?
Something long. I told you I had games.
I would go back and speed run Skyrim. Somebody's saying in the chat.
I'm sorry, you mean video games? So I would
BioShock Infinite. Somebody's mentioning. Yeah, this is the time to play the classics.
So some of the free games you can get like on Xbox One, like the first 2 Crackdown games are free.
Fun.
2 Human is free.
Fun.
What else is? Let me look through the list. There's
something not too dystopian, right? I don't want to live in dystopia. That's why I liked BioShock Infinite. It's kind of upbeat and pleasant.
Well,
while you're killing people, it's good.
I guess. But I mean, Monument Valley 2 is free on mobile.
There's a good one. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of this.
I want to play, and a lot of people are doing this, and I need to get. Unfortunately, they're all sold out to get a Nintendo Switch. But I really want to play. Everybody is playing that game. What am I can't remember. Animal Crossing. Everybody's playing that. Okay.
The game I was thinking of was literally called Firewatch.
Firewatch.
I don't know.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat room mentioned that. Yeah. I want to play Animal Crossing, but I don't have it. My kid has the Switch. He even has the game. He says it's very slow. He says it's practically real time. I said, no, that's why people are playing it. Because it's relaxing.
Right. Firewatch is now available on the Switch.
There you go. All right, some very good tips. I agree. And bake some more. Mary Jo, we have to do a bread recipe of the week or something.
I know. The no-knead bread recipe that was really famous for a while.
Excellent.
It is.
Yep.
But I got to tell you, what I made recently,
what?
salted tahini chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, man.
Just saying.
I happen to have a jar of tahini in my fridge right now.
It's so good. Oh, man. It's so good.
And then a listener gave me his grandma's chocolate cake recipe, but before he gave it to me, he made me swear that I wouldn't tell anybody. Can I tell Mary Jo? Can I tell Paul? Come on. That's not anybody. Right. It looked really good. He says, you will like this so much, you won't even need icing. You're going to love it.
My mother's chocolate cake was so dry that my brother and I still refer to it to this day as chocolate Sahara.
Oh, no.
This is what I would try to avoid at this point.
It's supposed to be like a devil's food cake thing, but all it does is it's so dry, it actually sucks the wetness out of your mouth.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's awful.
I have a recipe your mom should use instead.
This one has
my mom.
buttermilk and strong coffee in it.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, I have a recipe for a chocolate cake made with Guinness and coffee.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Pretty delicious.
This is a good time to learn. Learning how to cook would be such a great way to spend the apocalypse, too.
Yeah, and you take it with you afterwards. The only problem is ingredients.
It is. It's hard to find.
That's part of the inventiveness. I mean, you have
Yeah.
this kind of meat, or if you're eating meat or whatever, you have these ingredients, and what can we do with this?
Right.
You know?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. I don't know. It was magic. I got Whole Foods to deliver something tonight.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. How?
Okay. You want to know the secret? And now I'm ruining this. Because you know what you do is you go through this whole thing on Amazon. If you're an Amazon Prime member, delivery is free. You go through the whole thing. You do your whole list.
And then you can't get it.
And then it says, sorry, no delivery window's open.
I know. Great.
So here's the trick. It's all in your shopping cart right now anyway. You don't have to redo that. Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Midnight.
Oh, really?
Apparently, that's when they open up the new windows. And everybody's figured that out. And they all, by 1 o'clock, at 1 a.m., they're gone. So so we set an alarm for midnight. Get your cart all filled up.
That's good.
Yeah. Good tip, huh? Now everybody knows
Very good. Tip of the week.
Tip of the week.
Shopping tip of the week.
How about an app pick of the week, Mr. Thurrott?
Yeah, I got a couple. So, if you're a Microsoft guy and you want to check out the Microsoft editor, you can. It's worth looking at for sure. Grammarly this week, coincidentally, made their add-in available for Word for Mac, if you're a Mac user, and also Word Online. I don't think the Word Online one requires anything other than the browser plugin. So
beautiful.
If you use like Google Docs, they have integration there as well. And what else we got? Oh, Microsoft Power Toys came out, a new release 0.6.
They still do that?
Yeah, it's kind of a little like a homemade kind of a kind of a small thing. It's not, it's on. I think they just distribute it through GitHub if I'm not mistaken. But they have a cool, if you're familiar with the Mac has like a like Apple space, and it does the search thing in the middle. So one of the tools is something like that. So you can search for, in this case, running apps if you want to switch to an app, just without taking your hands off the keyboard. The best tool might be the image resizer. And this one, it allows you to select a bunch of photos in a folder or whatever, and then resize them to different sizes. You can do custom. and it will create copies. It won't replace the originals by default.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, really, really neat tool. So there's a feature called Fancy Zones.
Yeah.
But whatever, you should check it out. If there's some cool, there's definitely some cool stuff in there.
Nice. Enterprise Pick of the Week, Mary Jo Foley.
Microsoft posted a very helpful blog post on their tech community site today. If you're an IT pro and you're starting to get a little nervous about Patch Tuesday this month because a lot, if not all of your workers are remote and not in the office, they've got a whole post about how to get ready for a remote Patch Tuesday.
Oh, God.
So
oh, no. Yeah. That sounds horrible. Yeah. Does it involve oven mitts and tongs?
It does not, but it involves lots of tips and tricks around VPNs and split tunnel VPNs. So things you need to know if that's how your setup is arranged. And say you're an admin who usually uses Config Manager to handle Patch Tuesday. There are some things you need to know before you start dealing with people using split tunnel VPNs. So if you go to the Microsoft Tech Community site and you look for the Configuration Manager blog, you can get this post and get some handy resources and tips on what you need to be thinking about before Patch Tuesday, which is 2 weeks away.
Yikes.
Yep.
I hadn't even thought about that. Oh,
I know,
man.
right? We might need a whole new Patch Tuesday cocktail for remote Patch Tuesday. Just get Stephanie on that now.
Yeah.
Thinking about that.
All right. Wow.
Also, on the Microsoft Tech Community site, if you go to, if you do a search for enabling remote work, there's a new conversation space on there. I believe it was set up by Anna Chu. And there's a whole place where if you have questions about how to use different Microsoft products remotely or how to support your users and new configurations that you're having to manage, you can submit the questions right there, and the community and Microsoft people are chiming in to help get you answers.
That's nice.
So, yeah, that's kind of handy for people who are like, I don't know how to do this now. I knew how to do it before. So, yeah, you might want to just go also to Microsoft Tech Community and search for enabling remote work, and you'll find that conversation area.
Very handy.
Yes.
All right. Let's get some beer in here.
Oh, wait, one more enterprise pick.
One more.
Sorry.
You have two. Yes.
This is a fast one, though. Remember we talked about Microsoft retiring MCSE, MCSD, and MCSA certifications in June, and people were very worried about that because they said, oh, wow, like this is a very short window I have to finish up my certification. They've decided to give you a 7-month reprieve. Okay. So now you have until January to finish up those certifications. And that means if you have those certifications, the 2-year time clock for when they'll no longer be valid doesn't start until January. So that's nice. Helpful for people who are worried about finishing that up.
Yes. Very nice. Now some beer.
Now the beer. Yes. So if it's starting to feel like spring here in New York, even though we can't really go outside and enjoy it that much. So spring beers, when I think of spring beers, I think of sours and wild ales a lot because they're very spring-ish to me. There's a beer brewer in New York called Finback Brewing. They're in Glendale, New York, which is way the heck out there, but it's still considered, I guess, New York City proper. They are making a beer called Before Dawn, and it is an apricot sour that tastes like apricot juice. Like when I opened it, I was like, it smells like apricots. It tastes like apricots. It just feels so like refreshing and springy. And I'm counting it as one of my 5 fruit and vegetables for the day because it tastes so much like apricots. I think it should count as an apricot. So if you have access to Finback, and I know they're getting more accessible on the East Coast of the United States, look for Before Dawn. That's the new apricot sour.
Before Dawn, apricot sour. That sounds delicious.
It's so good.
How am I going to get it?
I don't know how you guys can get it out there, but you know what? I know Almanac in the San Francisco area does a lot of fruit sours as well, and they may also have an apricot sour. So if you look for Almanac, they probably will have something comparable.
Do a drive-by.
Do a drive-by.
Can you leave the apricot fruit sour on the curb?
Exactly.
I'm going to drive by.
Yep.
If it comes in bottles or cans, that's easy. You can fix it.
It is.
Hose
it
it
is.
down.
That's how I've been getting mine.
Yeah.
All, cans all the way.
Yeah, wipe them down.
Yep.
Mary Jo Foley writes about Microsoft nonstop at allaboutmicrosoft.com. Are you writing more or less these days, do you think?
Probably about the same, but in like a lot of my stories for some reason are happening later in the day. So my schedule is a little weirder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy life with Sriracha. You're getting to know
Thanks.
that kitty cat really, really, really well.
We are. We're becoming
Get a little tired
even
of each
closer.
other here.
We're getting. He's definitely sick of me for sure.
Is there nothing else? Is there no one else I can
This has been a dream for my dog. My dog gets walked twice a day now instead of once, and everyone's home all day. And
that's really true.
She thinks it's the best.
Yeah. Where have you guys been? I missed
Like,
you.
I don't know what's going on in the world, but it's awesome.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah,
I see so many dogs getting walked. All these dogs are getting walked so many times a day. It's so funny.
It is. It's nice.
so
You know, there are families out walking the dog. They're, that's a nice way to stay healthy.
It's wonderful.
It
And,
is a good
it's
way.
great because at least in Petaluma, people are crossing the street, really making sure there's good social distancing. But we're
good.
waving. Everybody's friendly, just like in New York City. We're all acting like we're New
Yeah,
Yorkers.
just like here.
Yeah.
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 We should all
Hey.
try to be like New Yorkers, you know?
I'm walking here. 6 feet, buddy.
Right. Well, the music from Saturday Night Live plays in the background.
You can tell by the way I walk 6 feet. Let's see. Paul Thurrott, he's at Thurrott.com. That's where he hangs his hat. Are you filing more or less, you think?
I've been busy the past 2-3 weeks. Yeah, really busy.
Yeah, good.
Grammarly, I don't know if I mentioned it. They give you like a word count thing every week, too. It's kind of nice. You get a little report.
I love the email. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel
use
like
more unique words than 99%
everybody
of people in this
does because everybody I know gets that.
Please
And I'm
don't ruin
thinking,
it for me. I
well,
look forward to this email.
I don't want to ruin it for you, but I feel like, can we all be in the 99th percentile?
So I usually write
Everyone's a
somewhere in
winner.
the 40,000 word range each week.
That's a
Last
lot.
week was 55.
Wow.
That's a lot.
The week before it
man.
was 70 something.
That's a novel.
No, but
No, you do.
it
You
was-
write. You write.
Hold on. It was
You do.
a lot of source code.
Oh,
I published
wait.
source code.
Pretty much that's all coding is
I was
typing.
cheating.
Cheating. Nice.
It's a lot of boilerplate. Thurrott.com. And for the books, which he does write by hand with a fountain pen or a quill pen, you can find those at leanpub.com. The Field Guide to Windows 10 is the latest. Always updated it, which is nice. So you get the latest version. We do this show right here, Windows Weekly, every Wednesday about 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1700 UTC. If you want to watch it live, there's a live audio and video stream available, actually multiple ones available at twit.tv/live. I know sometimes people like to be here live, and part of that is so they can be in the chat room and kind of the talking in the back of the class thing at irc.twit.tv, occasionally throwing spitballs, that kind of thing. But a great bunch in there. irc.twit.tv. You can also get on-demand versions of everything we do at our website. They're available at twit.tv/WW. There's also on YouTube. Your Amazon Echo or your Google Home will also launch it if you say, something like, "Hey, voice assistant, play Windows Weekly podcast," or something like that.
That's amazing. He uses the same name for his voice assistant as I do.
Nice.
Best thing you can do, subscribe. Find a podcast client you like. Search for Twit. Search for Windows Weekly. Subscribe. Subscribe to every show you'd like to hear. That way, it really helps us. We get a more consistent downloads. And in these days, but people aren't commuting, it's really nice to get people listening on a regular basis. So please do.
Go for a walk. Listen to the podcast.
Commute to your neighborhood dog park and back.
You're working from home, so walk around the block and then go to work.
Yeah. Pretend you're commuting.
You know?
That's actually a really good idea.
I have a routine.
I used to do the radio show at home, and it was terrible because I was in my jammies. I would kind of slop into the studio. It was like, ugh. And so I said,
We purposely get up at the same time every day.
Yeah, you have to do something to keep your
Yeah, because I mean, you could just picture it devolving into a college dorm room otherwise.
Easily. Pizza boxes everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Get up around 11, see what's going on.
Did you knock over the bong again? Oh, man.
Get up at the crack at 10:45 today.
The light. Oh, close the curtains. We're glad you're here, and I hope I'll see you next week on Windows Weekly. Take care, everybody. Stay healthy. That's the other thing. Everybody's now stay safe. That's the good.
Yeah.
I like it.